So let's look at some examples from this chapter. So here, a county health department tries an experiment using several hundred volunteers who are planning to use a nicotine patch to help them quit smoking. So all the volunteers are going to use a nicotine patch.
I hate nicotine pouches. Or those little.
No, patch. The thing you put on your arm so that you get nicotine. So
that seems just as bad.
Well, so no, because the part that kills you is not the nicotine.
The tobacco?
Yeah, it's the tar and the other, the carbon monoxide, the carbon dioxide, all those things. That's what kills you. It's not the nicotine.
The nicotine is what you get addicted to, right?
Yeah.
Nicotine is what you get addicted to, though, right?
Is that stuff in the little pouches?
The little pouches have, depends on what they are, but yeah, they have nicotine and usually some tobacco, some actual tobacco in them, if I remember correctly. I could be wrong on that, but the little pouch is a nicotine thing, and you can get addicted to nicotine.
Well, I hate those things.
Why?
I just do. We have beef. Not like personally, you know?
Okay.
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 All right. So they're using patches, right?
I said it wrong.
Not the pouch, the patch.
Patches.
Okay. So it's a way of weaning yourself off of it.
It's like the nicotine gum. Like the little
Yes.
gums. My grandpa uses that.
Yeah.
Like that.
Very much like that.
Yeah.
So has he ever been able to get off of the gum?
No. But he doesn't smoke anymore, so woo.
So that's good for everybody concerned.
He used to give it to us as little kids, and my mom would get super mad at him.
He give you cigarettes as little kids?
No, the gum.
Oh, he give you the gum.
Because he thought it was funny, because it's gum. And so we would be like, oh, can we have a piece of gum? And he'd be like, sure. And my mom would be like, no, what are you doing?
And so would you be bouncing off the walls and stuff afterwards?
No,
Or?
I don't remember.
Okay. All right. So everybody's going to use the patch. The subjects were then randomly divided into two groups. In group one, the people were given the patch and also attended a weekly discussion meeting with counselors and others trying to quit. So they had community, is what we would call that. People in group two were also given the patch but did not participate in counseling discussion meetings. After 6 months, 46 of the 143 smokers in group one and 30 of the 151 smokers in group two had successfully stopped smoking. Do these results suggest that such support groups could be an effective way to help people stop smoking? Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do on this one is define P1 and P2. So it's a fair bit of writing, sorry.
So you can do that before you actually do the conditions and stuff?
Yeah, because you're just setting up your variables. I also do it that way because then I usually, even before I do the test, I look at, well, what are the proportions for the two groups? So I can begin to get a sense, was there very much change or was it a very small change? Was the change actually in the opposite direction of what they thought it was going to be? I can look at all those things before I start doing the test. Okay? So that's a great question though. So let's let P1 be the proportion of all smokers who could successfully quit using a nicotine patch and attending weekly discussion meetings with counselors I'm just parroting what they have at this point. And others trying to quit. Let P2 be the proportion of all smokers who could successfully quit using just the patch and no meetings. So the observed proportion for P1 is 46 out of 143. Which is 0.322. And the observed proportion for group 2 was what, 30 out of 151? Which is 0.199. Okay, I'm going to stop for just a second. So if you, at this point, put a gun to my head and said, you've got 10 seconds to give me what's going to happen, I can comfortably do that.
Gun to your head.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Because
I'm not saying you need that. Like,
there's a big difference between these two, right?
Yeah.
yeah.
And my groups are pretty big.
So they did good.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
So, but now I have to actually show that. So I already know what the answer is going to be. The answer is going to be yes. The support groups are an effective way to help people stop smoking.
So you can tell that, but just by looking at the different percent of people who quit.
So in some cases it'll be obvious, right? It changed from not quite 20% to almost a third, right? That's a big change. And my groups were sufficiently large for me not to be worried about. If my groups were really small, I'd be like, well, I don't know if this is going to be statistically significant. Or if I had really big groups, but the percentage change was small, I'd be like, I don't know if this is going to be statistically significant or not. Okay? But here, and this happens in a lot of cases, you look at it and you're like, all right, know what the answer is going to be. I just need to go through the formality of explaining all of it. Okay?
And then the p-value is just going to represent?
The p-value is going to help you decide. Yeah. All right? So we can't do the test until we've gone through all the qualifications for the test. So, what are our qualifications?
Independent groups. Oh.
Yeah, and I always start with independent groups first because that's the one I'm most likely to forget.
Yeah.
Okay? And the thing that makes these two groups independent of one another is that we randomly divided up a bigger group, right? And that bigger group was a random sample, right? So now, what is the one thing that is a fly in the ointment in this entire thing?
Volunteers.
Yeah, we had several hundred volunteers. So you probably need to address that. Okay? So,
But in this instance, it's not necessarily a bad they
It's
probably
it's
would quit.
it just means they want to. Yeah.
Some and might even make it better because they're all actively trying to quit.
Right. And when I think about that, then I look at my sentences here and I said of all smokers, I might want to consider adding on the phrase who desire to quit. Right? Because all of my volunteers desire to quit. So I'm actually going to add that right now. Who desire to quit. Right? Because just because I put a smoker on the patch, that doesn't mean they're going to quit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They don't want to.
Even if it does help them.
Right. They just have even more nicotine. They might become even super addicted or something.
That's super.
Okay? And I'll go ahead and add that here. Who desire to quit. Did she say super bad?
I said super addict.
Super addict? All right. So, while the subjects were volunteers, they all desired to quit smoking. So when I'm looking at my sample, I want my sample to look like my population. And that's why I was like, okay, adding in this who desired to quit makes it like okay, my volunteers are taken from the group of people who desire to quit. Right? All right. The two groups are independent. Because they were randomly assigned to one of the two groups. I guess I should just say they were randomly. I already talked about the two groups. The two groups are independent because they were randomly assigned, I guess, to a group. I'll say it that way. So we've got the two groups are independent of one another. Okay? All right, so what else do we need to have here? We also need to have, our success failure part, right?
And that they're individually independent.
And I'm sorry?
They're individually independent, right?
So,
Randomly assorted.
Or does that get rid of all three?
yeah, this kind of gets rid of the whole deal.
Okay.
So, in group one, there were 46 successes and what would that be? 97 failures. While in group two, there were 30 successes and 121 failures. And I like the way I was looking at your book, and I like the way they do this. They list that, and then they just say all of these counts are greater than 10. So we've ticked all the boxes at this point. All right. So we will perform a 2-sample z-test for proportions. All right, so at that point, you grab your calculator. I figured out a better way to do the calculator.
Oh,
You just do that and you just pull it up.
look at that.
That would be, that's way smarter. Yeah, it only took me, I don't know, 9 months to figure it out.
Do what?
Instead of trying to keep it like down here at the bottom, I can just always do that and then pull it up and it comes back on top.
Good job.
Yeah, slow but effective. All right, so I'm gonna go to inference. I'm doing a test. I'm doing a 2 proportion z-test. And this is nice because it'll also remind you, I'm doing 2 proportions, it's gonna be a z-test.
Oh, we didn't write
Oh, we didn't write
it.
this part, did we?
Boo.
No.
Minus 20 points.
Well, but I haven't finished. I didn't turn it in.
Oh, of course not. Obviously.
So since I have room up here, I'm gonna write it up here. My null hypothesis is that P1 minus P2 is equal to 0.
That's the same thing as P1 equals P2, correct?
Yep.
Yeah.
My alternative hypothesis, I like doing it this way because then I do the same thing here. P1 minus P2 is greater than 0. Sometimes if I say they're equal to 0, then I have to go back and think about, all right, wait a minute, which way do I want this? I always put the bigger one first, or the one that I hope is bigger first.
Why couldn't you say like not equal to 0?
Because it says, is it helpful?
Oh, and
To be helpful, the proportion who do well with the patch and the meetings needs to be higher.
Yeah, that makes sense.
All right. So, see, I just do that, and wha-bam, there it is. So I've got to do P1 minus 2, P2. I need to make that greater than 0.
Oh, we forgot the alpha level. Yeah, we did.
Dang.
Yeah. But see, the nice thing is that, well, we haven't done everything yet. So I'll just go, okay, with alpha equal to 0.05. They didn't specify, so typically we'll use 5%.
Oh. What's the symbol for alpha? Is it just an A? Or is it an X? Or what? Does it matter?
It's the Greek letter alpha.
Dang, I guess I just missed that every time you've been doing it.
I thought it was always a small little cursive A.
Yeah, that's
No,
supposed
no,
to
no,
be
it's
A.
the Greek letter alpha. Looks like a little fish.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, I got it now. Thank you, Davis.
Yeah,
Still gonna write an A. Oh, okay,
She's a
alpha,
rebel,
right?
Mr. Davis.
yeah. No one will know what it stands for. They're like, you can't use A when you mean alpha.
What if it looks like an A?
Same.
Why does it look like an A on here?
It doesn't. Let's see. Next.
I see,
Yeah, look more carefully.
It's like a little circle with the name.
I'll just draw your fish.
It's just a little fish.
I'll just draw the fish.
Just draw like that.
Oh.
All right. So everything is set now. And wait a minute, did I put all the numbers in? No, I didn't put any of the numbers in. I was like, why are those so bad? 46, 143, 30 and 151. This should check with what I found earlier, and it does. I also have my pooled proportion, and I would suggest that you just write down all the things that they give you here. Your pooled proportion is 0.0258. The z-test statistic is 2.4. And you know at that point that this is going to be statistically significant. You know it's going to give you a really small p-value. Yeah, the p-value is 0.008. So the probability that z is greater than or equal to 2.4 is 0.008, which is certainly less than alpha. Therefore, what do we do?
Reject the null.
Yeah, therefore we reject the null. And there's always an and. You either reject the null or you fail to reject the null, and
Suggest that the support groups could be offensive.
yeah,
Evidence that.
and find evidence that these results, or just say and conclude that these results, and again here I'm just parroting the rest, suggests that such support groups why did it stop writing all of a sudden? I guess I got too far ahead of it. Could be an effective way to help people stop smoking. I think I got this out of a supplemental thing that came with the book. I have a problem with the way this one was worded actually at the end. What is my, and I left it because I like to discuss it. They're saying that the support groups can be effective.
Support groups and the patch.
The support group combined with the patch can be an effective way, or is more effective than with the patch alone. Okay? I'm answering it the way that it was asked, but I think it's kind of a poor question in some ways. All right. Let's do part B. If you concluded that the support program in number 1 is beneficial, construct a 95% confidence interval for the proportion of improvement over using the patch alone. All right, so I got to back out of this and go to intervals and do 2 proportions. And this is one thing that actually the TI has over the numworks. This is one of the few ones that I found. On the TI, if you have already done this work for the test, if I remember correctly, and error you can let me know, when you go to the interval, I think those values are automatically brought over. Yeah, this doesn't automatically bring the values over. I might have a strongly worded email because now I got to put all these values back in. So what was it? 46 and 143. 43 and 30 and 151. And did they ask for a 95% confidence interval? Yep. and it gives you the difference between them. So p hat 1 minus p hat 2 is 0.123. No. Was it 123?
Yes.
And I'm always going to write down the things that they tell me. So the difference is that the Z critical is, we know this, we've done this a lot of times, 1.96. That's one that hopefully you've got memorized. It's the worst asterisk I've ever drawn in my life, but it'll do. The standard error is 0.051. And then I usually don't write down the margin of error. The margin of error is just the critical value times the standard error, right? And it's going to give me this nice little, so it's between 0.023 and what was the upper one? 0.222. So in terms of confident, I'm 95% confident that based on these results, that you'll get at least a 2.3% bump and maybe at most a 22% bump by adding the groups to doing the patch. So you're more likely to be successful.
Not for the.
No, this is for doing the groups with the patch over doing the patch alone. Now, they didn't ask me for that.
Say like that by adding, what did they say? Support groups.
By adding the support group, we're 95% confident that we'll have somewhere between a 2.3 and a 22.2% increase in the proportion of people who will be able to quit smoking successfully.
2.3 and 22.
Yeah, 2.3% and 22.2%. And again, they didn't ask us for that, but that's what's going on.
Teachers and students, please pardon the interruption. Middle school students, today there would be an SC.
So notice this doesn't include 0, right?
Yeah.
I'm 95% confident that it will increase the scores,
We will also be providing.
right?
So you can come straight there.
That's how these two things work together. All right? All right.
Would it be increasing the likelihood that smokers will quit? Or
That someone who desired to smoke would be able to quit successfully.
Okay.
Just a quick aside, I had a colleague at Westfield we used to have, in addition to having regular counselors, we also had drug counselor. And,
Drug counselor?
pardon?
A drug counselor?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, he was a full-time drug counselor. And he was a former heroin addict. Really, really interesting guy, super smart, right? And the interesting thing about him is that we were talking about cigarettes, and he's like, I kicked heroin on my own, but I can't quit smoking.
Wow.
He said for him personally, nicotine was way more addictive than heroin was.
Then heroin? Which
Yeah.
That's heroin. Here, right? Needles?
Typically, you shoot up heroin. Yes.
Oh.
It's not cocaine.
Oh.
Cocaine is it?
Is he shooting? Yeah, I know that one.
Heroin, you typically with a needle. You're typically shooting it up.
Oh. Sorry, I wasn't following you. You were saying shooting up. But
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So let's take a look at this next one. In the December 2002 issue of Consumer Reports, Consumer Union reported on their investigation of the presence of bacteria in packages of chicken sold in supermarkets. Is that really us? Did I talk way too long today? All right.
Interesting.
What
But
it was.
hopefully that was helpful to you, though, even so.